There are a lot of pros and cons, no matter how you look at it. I've never regretted getting my license. It's always paid for itself. I'd say like a lot of the pros are you're not relying on someone else for that expert opinion. And I couldn't imagine right now waiting for comps to come back or waiting for an ARV to come back or waiting for someone else to submit a contract for me. That stuff right now would annoy me to no end. I can do it now. I could look up comps in about 5 minutes. I can have an ARV, and waiting for this other agent to do that for me is a lot of time that I can't waste usually. And so I think that's having direct access to the tools is like the number one benefit of having your license.
You're listening to the We.L.E.R.E Real Estate Show, a podcast that discusses the intricacies of real estate investing with your host, Marcus E. Maloney. Marcus is a real estate investor best known for being the equity king. He's been awarded that moniker because he and his team find amazing real estate deals. He will be talking with investors who have done some transformational things in the real estate industry. They'll discuss their process, their strategies, and how their investments transform their lives and the communities they invest in. We welcome you to the We.L.E.R.E Real Estate Show.
Hello, We.L.E.R.E Real Estate family. I am excited about another show. And on today's show, you're going to get some quality content from a quality individual. If you're looking to learn how to find deals, how to market, how to secure deals, then this is the podcast episode for you. I have Anson Young, who's based out of Denver, Colorado, and Anson is the deal finder, man. This guy knows how to find deals. You know how to stack lists, get things together for your marketing and everything like that. I met Anson at the Bigger Pockets conference in 2019, last year, and he was up talking about list stacking. And I was like, hey, man, I didn't know list stacking was a thing. We were doing it, but we didn't know that it had a title. You gave it a title, and I was like, okay, I got to have you on the show for other people to learn how to find deals. So Anson, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, Marcus. We put it together, and we're here now.
Absolutely, man. So I just want to welcome you here to the show. So give us a little background for those who may not know who you are, what you do. If they don't, I don't know where they are, because you've been a big contributor to Bigger Pockets. You're a published author with Bigger Pockets as well. So I don't want to steal your thunder. So, introduce us to Anson.
Yeah, sure. So let's see how far back we want to go. Let's see, when I was 10. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so I started off in IT like a lot of people did in the early 2000s and got laid off like everybody did in the early 2000s, especially in the technology field. And I really, really didn't like my future being in someone else's hands. If I'm going to, mess it up, I'm going to do it myself, I guess. And so at the same time, we decided that we're going to move down to Phoenix, my wife and I, and to be closer to family. My brother just had a baby, so we figured, hey, I don't have a tech job anymore. Let's figure out something else. And so on the way down there, like everybody else, I ended up reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. And literally in the moving truck, when it wasn't kind of my turn to drive, I was reading that book front to back. And when we landed in Phoenix, it was basically like, hey, new city, new opportunities, new me, right?
Yeah.
And then I just went on the path of doing every single thing that I could to learn everything that I could about real estate. So I attended all the meetups. I was the guy who was bothering everybody, saying, hey, if you need anything done, I'm your guy. Just teach me what you're doing. And I was scattered in a million different directions, like you are when you start out.
Yeah,
everything's a shiny object, and I even took on a mentor who kind of like reinforced that scattering. It was like, hey, here's 10 different ways, to make money in real estate, and we would go through all the 10 different things. And so, of course, when I got that first deal, which is about a year later, I had no idea what to do with it. I tried to lease option it. I tried to rent it. I tried to just wholesale it. I didn't know that was a thing, but I tried to wholesale it, and eventually just ended up moving into it and fixing it up ourselves. So a live in flip.
Okay.
So that was our very, very first deal. And that was in 2005. And so we sold it a year later and decided that Phoenix wasn't for us. So we moved back to Colorado and been here ever since. I got my license shortly after, been fix and flipping and wholesaling and wholetailing and being a licensed real estate agent ever since.
Okay, so let's kind of go back, because there's some correlation between your story and my story. Similar. I moved from Chicago to Phoenix, and on the way over, I wasn't reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. I actually stumbled upon the Bigger Pockets podcast. So I had 24 hours of just real estate content being pushed in my head while I'm driving this, U-Haul truck across the country. And they were talking about direct mail, and they were talking about yellow letters. And I'm like, why are you listening to this? How does this correlate to real estate? And then towards the end, it was like a light bulb went off. It was like, okay, well, that's how you find deals. You have to think different. You have to think outside of a realtor, the MLS, and things like that in order to find deals. So when you got here to Phoenix, you did like most people. You said, okay, I'm going to be everywhere at all times. Wherever they're talking about real estate, that's where I'm going to be at. What action did you take to get that first deal?
Yeah, so it honestly came 100% from networking and being willing to do. I would do, odd jobs and crap jobs for anybody I could get my hands on. So if there's any agents who wanted signs, punched in the yards, I'd do it, And so eventually I connected with a good group of 2 or 3 people who, I was like, hey, I'll go put out signs, or I'll go deliver these contracts, or I'll, drop this check off at title, just being an errand boy, around. I was bartending at the time, which I really actually did enjoy over tech, but, but at the end of the day, it's just talking to people. And so I think that was the part I enjoyed the most. And so eventually, after doing all these jobs, one of the agents that I was, and she was an investor herself too, but this agent that I've been doing these jobs for, she's like, hey, you know what? I have an investor who's looking to sell one of his properties. I think that this might be a good deal for you to start off on. And we went through the numbers together. I obviously had a lot of trust in her that I wasn't getting, screwed over.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we went through the numbers, kind of the exit. It was on the west side of Phoenix, and so it was right by Westgate. So right where they're building the Cardinal Stadium.
Yep.
They're turning this, field into basically an outdoor mall and all this stuff. And so she's like, you're going to be right next door to this stuff. The Super Bowl's coming in a few years. This is kind of the area that you want to be. And we lived on the west side, so I kind of understood the west side a bit. And it all kind of made sense. And I took that leap of faith of put the contract on it, got the financing lined up, and just kind of jumped in to the deep end. And I did flail a little bit. I think it was about a month and a half before kind of figured out that we were going to move into it and fix up the rest of it and flip it. But it took about a month and a half where, we basically had a house we were renting and a house that we had just bought. And it was our very first house we've ever bought, and it was going to be an investment. And so it took me a while to figure that part out. But, we figured it out. We were like, hey, we'll do the work ourselves. We'll fix up the rest of it. And when we go to sell, hopefully the money's there, the equity's there, that we'll make some money. But honestly, at that time in Phoenix, you could throw a dart at a map and find a deal, because appreciation was just going through the roof. So it would have been hard to lose on that deal, knowing that appreciation was so high at the time.
Well, the thing, and this is the thing that I wanted to chime in on, is that you were willing to do whatever it took to really kind of get in proximity of other investors and agents, because you knew that's how you were going to learn, so that's the reason why you were at the different meetups. You said, hey, I'll hang out signs, I'll do whatever. And because of your effort in your work, that deal kind of came to you. You didn't go out actively looking for it. Someone brought it to you and said, you know what, this will probably be something good for you to take a look at. And I wanted to bring this up is because I tell people you have to get out there and you have to make yourself available to other people, even if you're not making any money, but you're getting that education and you're learning who the real players are. And it's just that one act of favor. Basically, somebody said, you know what, here's the numbers. I think this is a good deal for you. And you went out and did it. Now, do you think you would have been able to find that deal without that agent bringing that opportunity to you?
I mean, at the time, I don't think I was ready, yet. I wasn't out trying to find my own deals. I was still trying to learn as much as I could. I was in that analysis paralysis phase where, I was taking in all this information, but not doing a ton of action. Some of the action was forced, where it'd be like an investor wanted me to go knock on doors of pre-foreclosures, but I was basically acting like a bird dog and handing him over, the people
lead.
that were, the lead that when they were ready to go, he would take it from there, basically. And so I wasn't in the headspace, I don't think, of like, oh, I could do this myself and I'm going to go find my own deal. I was still like, I still have so much to learn. I don't think I'm ready yet. And so when I was thrown into the deep end, or I took the plunge, it was like, oh, maybe I should have been looking for myself, or maybe, I can do this. The financing got set up. And it was like, oh, maybe I was ready.
Yep. and that's the funny thing about, taking action is, you take those small little steps and you figure that small step out and you're like, okay, what's next? Okay, now I figured that out. And then what's next? Now I figured that out. And then because you have, you're in proximity of other people, you say, hey, I need financing. Hey guys, where should I go for financing? And I'm pretty sure a couple of them was like, well, you can go here, there, and there. So now you got opportunities there for your financing. So you with that first property, you were looking at, so you said that you were going to try and do a lease option at first, and then wholesale, hotel. So you were going down the whole gambit on getting rid of this thing. So what happened with that? Why weren't you able to wholesale it or find an end buyer for it, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just inexperience. I did list it as a lease option, and when the first few people came and they were asking about terms, and I kind of had terms in mind, just knew enough to just be dangerous, had some terms in mind. And I remember a guy coming and he's like, well, what if I have, I think I was asking $1,100 a month and 7,500 down or something like that. And I had a guy come and he was like, well, what if I have like 20,000 down? Can we get that payment down to like 900? And that was under my mortgage payment. And I think I panicked a little. I was like, I don't know what to do. And so I called my mentor, and he was like, yeah, of course you should take that. You can take the difference out of the amount that he paid over. And I think I just hesitated maybe a little bit too long. That buyer went on to the next property or whatever.
Yep.
And so it is kind of hesitation and inexperience, a pretty bad mix to come together to try to do a deal like that. And so, so those two things worked really, really hard against me. And I think at the same time, my wife's kind of like, well, we own this house. Like, I'd love to go in and try and fix it. And, I know what colors I want to paint it. And I know what to do about it. I know what to do about the kitchen. Why don't we just do that stuff? And, it just worked out that we're right in that right position to end our lease and then just move in and fix up the rest of it. So it worked out in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And your wife was on the right track. She's like, well, we're renting, but we own this property over here. Why don't we just stop renting and move into this property?
Yeah.
And like you said, do a live-in flip. So how did that go with the live-in flip? Because you just moved from Denver to here. So where did you find contractors to help with the work? Did you do all of the work? Kind of how did that transpire?
Yeah. So with the network, I could have gotten anybody that I needed, obviously. But honestly, looking back now, knowing what I know now, it was such a lipstick. It did not need a whole lot. We put in like some new flooring, paint. We did some work on the kitchen cabinets, yard, like the backyard in Phoenix. It had no rock or anything. It was just dirt with a bunch of weeds growing.
Mhm.
And so, we took care of that kind of stuff. And honestly, we didn't really need to do more than that. Looking back at it,
Okay.
we should have been able to wholesale it at the time. But again, we were just like so clueless as to what we were doing, even with the little bit of help that we did have. Maybe I didn't ask for enough help of like, hey, what's my exit on these things? I was trying to figure it out myself and, be a big boy about it. But
Gotcha.
But I think it worked out so well. If I would have lease optioned it, I would have been in it for longer than a year. And right after 2006 or 2005, the market started really cooling down in Phoenix.
Mhm.
I'd probably have to still be owning that property for it to break even. Today, like
Right.
it probably just got back up to 2004, 2005 value. So we were pretty lucky that we sold it a year later. Did the work, lived in it for a while, seasoned our loan, made sure that we weren't breaking any rules with anything, and then getting out at the right time, which I wish I could say it was that we did it on purpose, but it was totally just the stars aligned and we got out at the right time. Total luck.
Well, you better celebrate your wife because she made sure that you didn't get in over your head. So, Anson, if you can remember, I know this was, 15, 14 years ago. Do you remember what your initial purchase was on it and what your exit price was?
Yeah. So, oh boy, you're going to make me think here.
And it don't have to be exacts.
Yeah, I think our initial purchase was around 159, I believe.
Okay.
And our exit was 225 plus a little bit of commissions. And so I remember that we netted 60,000 on it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that was a good pot, to go back to Denver with, to start back over in Denver with.
Oh yeah, it was great. I mean, we immediately put some money down on a new house that we were moving into, and then we have some money to pay off debts and stuff. And so yeah, it was great. That's the most amount of money I've made, in one chunk ever up to that point. So it was like,
you're right. What to do with it? I'm rich. I'm rich.
Right?
Everything is going good. So now you got back to Denver, and I'm just kind of going down this timeline because I like to make sure people get the full background understanding of who we're talking with here on the line. So now you're back in Denver. You got some confidence because you just closed this deal. You got 60 grand in your pocket. What was the next step of your evolution as a real estate investor / agent going from there?
Yeah, and so landing back in Denver, I felt like it was a little bit like starting over because all my networking that I've done for the last 2 years, all these friends that I've made, they were still back in Phoenix, and I knew the Phoenix market just enough to be dangerous. Now I'm landing in a new market, and even though I grew up here, I mean, who's really paying attention when they're a teenager? So I felt like I was almost starting over. So I kind of went back to the basics, and I went back to meetups. I went back to networking with agents and investors. I actually ended up landing a job with an agent to do kind of miscellaneous stuff and a lot of broker price opinions. There's a lot of short sales coming down the road. And so
real quick, Anson, so people know, and my question to you is, did you have your license already in Colorado?
Not yet. I think it was like 2007 when I got my license. So I had about a year gap.
Okay.
That I was just I was doing a lot of BPOs, a lot of valuation. And now that, looking back, I really cherish that time because I probably did a few hundred BPOs. And so what better to, and I knew the state contracts by then. I was doing transaction stuff. And so having knowledge of the contracts and then, basically doing these BPOs for banks, I was valuating 10 properties a day,
Mhm.
and I was getting paid for it.
So what is it? So what is a BPO for those that don't know?
Yeah, so a BPO is basically like a light appraisal that a bank will order from an agent, and they'll actually order multiple. They'll typically order it from multiple agents, so they have multiple opinions. And so, since the bank, Wells Fargo doesn't know the Aurora, Colorado market, they're going to hire an agent to say, "Hey, what is this house worth? Go take a look at it." A lot of the times, it's just a drive-by
Yep.
BPO. So you just take some pictures of the outside and then you pull comps, and you're doing basically an appraiser's job up to a point. You're just kind of given this shoot from the hip evaluation of the property.
Okay.
So then you submit all that to the bank. They pay you per BPO, and the agent who was ordering the work, got a cut of that, and I got, a cut of that. So I was, getting paid to learn how to evaluate ARV of properties, basically.
Yeah. So the bank were paying you to learn how to comp properties,
Yep,
which
exactly.
is excellent. I mean, it's stepping into again that right situation and getting that education. So now you're doing these BPOs, you're learning. What was next?
So I actually took on some short sale. I took on all the short sales with that agent as well. And so he was doing probably about 10 short sales at a time. And so I took all those on and learned, from the ground up. And it was the Wild West of short sales. So every bank had a different, procedure.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody had a different way of doing things. And so even though I wasn't even licensed yet, in that office, other agents in that brokerage would come to me and say, "I don't know how to do this short sale." And so I would help them out and process their short sales for them, for a fee. And then, I pretty much got licensed right after that to be able to do retail work, to be able to do more short sales, BPOs and stuff myself was the goal. And so got licensed, and then went out on my own for a little bit. And then I hooked in with a REO team, which is bank-owned foreclosures. They're selling them for the bank, and did a, how long was I with them? About 3-year stint with them, and we were selling like 400 properties a year for the banks. And
Wow.
and at the same time is when I was doing my first deals back in Denver at the same time. So
Okay.
so I was doing a lot of agent stuff, and then trying to build up my investor side stuff too.
So now that's the quandary that a lot of people have is, should I get my license if I want to be a wholesaler or if I want to be a real estate investor? And from Bigger Pockets, that's one of the, sticky topics. Should I or shouldn't I? And you'll get 50% say yes, 50% say no. So coming from a person that has a license, that's doing a lot of investment properties, what do you think would be a benefit for having a license, and what do you think would be a detriment to having a license as a wholesaler or a real estate investor?
Yeah, so there are a lot of pros and cons no matter how you look at it. I've never regretted getting my license. It's always paid for itself. I'd say like a lot of the pros are you're not relying on someone else for that expert opinion. And I couldn't imagine right now waiting for comps to come back, or waiting for an ARV to come back, or waiting for someone else to submit a contract for me. That stuff right now would annoy me to no end. I can do it now. I could look up comps in about 5 minutes. I can have an ARV, and waiting for this other agent to do that for me is a lot of time that I can't waste usually. And so I think that's having direct access to the tools is like the number one benefit of having your license. So I have access to the tax records. I have access to lists. I have access to, every property that's been sold on our MLS system for the last however many years.
Yep.
I can go in and find that in seconds, and even if it's like, hey, I wonder what's being built or who bought that land over there. 30 seconds later, boom, I have that answer.
You got that information.
I don't have to wait on anybody. And so that's the number one pro. And I'll throw in a quick number two pro, which is I think it lends me a lot of credibility when I go to talk to sellers who don't have their house on the market with an agent. I walk in, I have, standardized contracts. I have a licensing board above me that's going to drop the hammer on me if I do anything shady.
Yep.
They can look up, my license record basically. And so I think that lends a lot of credibility when I go in. I'm just not some guy running it out of the back of the van. I've been, I've been licensed for 14 years and they would know first if I did anything shady.
Yeah.
They take customer complaints very seriously. So that's another pro, but moving on to the cons, I think the big one is that there are some investment strategies that I can't do because I'm licensed, whether it's your broker or just state law. Like I can't do a wraparound sandwich lease option. I just can't do that legally.
Right.
No brokerage would let me do that. And I could lose my license if I'm doing stuff like that.
And guys, the reason, real quick, Anson, and the reason why he can't do that is because as an agent, you are privy to a lot of information that the general public doesn't have. So because you have that information, they don't want agents to use that information to skew, how they will work the numbers and kind of pull the wool over the general public eyes. So just keep that in mind. But if you're doing everything above board, then you have absolutely nothing to worry about. And like you said, Anson, that credibility piece is very, very, essential, because you can walk in and say, hey, you know what? If anything happens in this transaction that you deem inappropriate or anything like that, I have someone that I have to answer to. Here's that person's name, contact information, my broker, so on and so forth. So that gives them that level of comfort. Because I get this question asked to me all of the time, because I'm an agent and a real estate investor as well. And people say, well, aren't you, one of the cons is you got to give your broker so much and, your commissions and things like that. So we'll talk about that here next. But again, there are definitely some benefits that put you in the room and you have access to information that other people don't have access to. And you lightly touched on it, Anson, was list.
Yeah, for sure.
People don't talk about that. You have access to lists. So kind of share us that before we move on to some of the cons of having a license.
And yeah, I mean, if, I can check basically, I think MLS is a killer list, just because I can go on there and I can see what's mislisted, I guess, if you want to say, like something that's listed in the wrong area, has the wrong zoning, stuff like that. So the general public's looking at it, and even savvy, real estate agents are looking at it, but they don't realize like that area is zoned for this, but somebody put it in there wrong. And so they're looking at it and they go, well, I can't build there because it's zoned wrong. But you go in there and you kind of capitalize on the agent's mistakes, and you can look at stuff like that. Like it's listed as a single family house, but it's actually a duplex, and it has a carriage house in the back. It's like that wasn't in there. And if anybody knew that, they would jump on it.
Yeah.
But by doing some extra work and really knowing your neighborhoods, you can really capitalize on that. But the other lists, I can pull tax lists, tax record lists, and I can pull, even now, I don't know about your MLS there, but we have this new tool that lets us see who's likely to move soon.
Yep.
And they base that on a bunch of different, scary metrics of credit, credit history, purchasing history. They put all that together and they say, who's likely to move in the next 6 months. And so I have a list of those people that I can snap into stacked lists too. And that's free to me because I'm a licensed real estate agent, and I pay my MLS fees, and that's just one part that comes with it. So a lot of cool little tools and lists that you can pull out that may not be meant for those kind of things, but if you can cross-reference some of those zoning lists and likely to sell and kind of pull out as much data as you can, there's a ton of it there just ready to be picked out.
Okay, perfect. And we're going to use that to we're going to use that because you lightly touched on it. That's the list stacking that I want to talk about, that I want us to feature on. But before we go there, now so if someone's considering, should I or shouldn't I, what are some of the cons of having a license when trying to wholesale or be an investor?
Yeah, so we touched on that one con of there's certain strategies that you can't do under your broker, even though they're totally legal. But as an agent, you're held to a different standard, of course. When you go to wholesale, I always double close, because an assignment could be seen as brokering without a license to some people, or you're trying to skirt your commission. Whereas if I'm just a straight up buyer, I'm a straight up buyer. There's no commissions involved unless my broker, makes me collect them or something. But I'm not skirting around this, hey, I'm trying to get around commissions by taking an assignment. I'm actually closing on it and then reselling it. So there's really there's no gray area there, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
So some people who are used to assignments might run into a broker who's saying like, hey, it looks like you're trying to get around commissions, that kind of thing. So I'd say, I'd say that's one thing when you're wholesaling. And of course, disclosure. Some people aren't comfortable with agents. And so when you have to disclose like, hey, I'm a licensed real estate agent in the state of Colorado, I'm representing myself or my company, and I don't represent you, sorry, And so that might turn off some investors they don't want to go that extra step when they're either marketing or when they're talking to somebody on the phone to make sure that they know, and it's clear as day, like you're a licensed real estate agent, you're a professional, and then I typically have to make them sign something that says I'm not representing them in any way. Like if they want an agent, go get one, but I'm not your guy.
Right. Right.
I'm only representing myself or my company. And yes, I'm a professional, and that, yes, you understand that I'm going to make money on this deal. So,
and go ahead. I'm sorry not to cut you off.
No, that was the end. It's just, all those things could be seen as a negative if the investors don't want to jump through those extra hoops.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that freaks out a lot of people, is the whole disclosure aspect of being a real estate agent and being an investor, because even with the state issued forms, you have to have all of these disclosures filled out, so now someone has a 2-page contract as just a real estate investor or a wholesaler, but you're coming in as an agent, and now your contract is 15 pages, because you got all of these disclosures. What do you say to people that are an agent, and they say, okay, well, this guy came in with a 2-page contract, but now you got to come in with the 15-page contract. How do you navigate that conversation with the seller?
Yeah, so I think that goes straight back to credibility, because I always tell them, hey, this isn't just something that's just written on the back of a napkin. This is the exact contract you can download from, the state of Colorado website for real estate. And you can see that nothing's been changed or altered. They have a ton of lawyers that look at it every single year, and they make tweaks and changes. So everything in here is boilerplate. There is no added, provisions except for the ones that we agree on. And this is how, thousands of real estate transactions are done every single month. And so to kind of lean on that credibility of, hey, this is a state contract. This is what everybody uses. There's nothing funny in here because it comes, directly from the state. I will walk you through it line by line. And if you ever need extra help, which I have had to get in a foreclosure situation, they wanted a lawyer to look at it. And so, but they didn't want to pay for a lawyer. So I had to ask a favor of a real estate attorney that comes to one of my meetups. We sat on a conference call and walked them through line by line. And so if you're confident in the contract, you can walk them through in plain English, line by line, and then, be very patient with them and ask them if they have any questions, and that you're available to answer any of these things. You're leaning on the credibility of it being a boilerplate contract, and you're building that rapport of like, hey, I'm here to help. Anything that's funny language in here, we'll work through it together so that we understand it. And I don't want you to sign anything that you're uncomfortable signing. I want to make sure that it's a win-win situation. and really just go down that route of like, hey, I'm here to help first. And if there's anything in here that you don't like, we'll work through it. We'll see if we can get rid of it, or we can go around it, or, at the end of the day, we can shake hands and walk away as friends. So.
And that's good, because I had ran into that problem when I was just getting started and I had my license. And, I use the whole credibility factor. Here in Arizona, you can also get like it's a card, the card when you're a member of, the National Association of Realtors. So I say, look, I'm a member of the National Association of Realtors. And this contract here, yes, it's thick. We'll go through it line by line, but at the same time, there's provisions in there to protect you as the seller, as well as me as the buyer, where that 2-page contract that other investors bringing in is all skewed towards them. They have these exit clauses, out clauses, everything like that. I said, and then what happens if, they back out of the deal or something like that? There's no one to hold them accountable. And like you said, it really lends to that benefit of being that agent. So guys, if you're having that quandary between should I or shouldn't I always tell people in the beginning, if you don't have the money, do a deal or two, get it done, and then take that money and get your license, because it opens up so many doors, because now you have access to the MLS. You have access to other realtors, for pocket listings. You just have access to contractors, because now you're in the room with real estate professionals versus just being around with other upstart wannabe wholesalers or fix and flippers and things like that.
Exactly. Yeah, that's great. That's perfect said.
So let's kind of segue here, Anson. Real quick, we're going to take a brief break and hear a word from our sponsors. And when we come back, I want to talk primarily on marketing, because you have some great things that you do with marketing, that I really want our listeners to understand and hear. So we'll take a brief break and we'll come back with Anson Young.
PropStream is the industry's #1 tool for locating distressed properties and connecting with highly motivated sellers. With 100% coverage across the U.S., PropStream provides a deep dive into any property's specific details, making it easy to generate lists of distressed properties and contact to the owners. No other product or service can compare. Gain access to MLS property details like expired listings. You can pull accurate comps, even sale prices in non-disclosure states. This information is typically reserved for licensed real estate professionals, but it is also available to you in PropStream. Gain access to unlimited nationwide property search, comparable home sales, targeted marketing lists, and owner contact lookup, built-in marketing tools, hundreds of filters to search and sort leads. Start your free 7-day trial now by going to proud.propstreampro.com/WeLoveEquity.
All right, guys, we are back and we're here with Anson Young out of Denver, Colorado. Anson is a real estate investor and a professional real estate agent. And we've been talking about how to do deals as a real estate investor and a real estate agent. And what we want to talk about right now is about marketing. What kind of marketing should we be doing? Can we be doing? And how to pull lists? So, Anson, I'm going to leave the floor open to you, man. So let's start, with marketing. What should we look for? How should we market getting started?
Yeah, I mean, we got another hour and 45 minutes, right, to go through everything. Now, so in a nutshell, I think I could break this down into two different areas, or maybe 3 different areas. So what's kind of not working right now, and then we'll talk about what is working and doing some stacked lists and some stacked marketing. So those are the 3 things that we'll talk about real quick. So the first thing of what's working right now in a major market, what's not working right now in a major market and with a ton of competition. Phoenix is kind of like Denver, kind of like Portland, these similar sized cities with red hot markets, low inventory. What I find that's not working right now, and all the investors that I talk to in this kind of arena is, just doing one thing isn't working anymore. That's a major thing. So back in the day, you could just send out pink postcards and that's all you did, and you would get deals, coming through your door. Right now, just doing that one thing isn't working anymore. And for me, bandit signs aren't working. They just don't exist here. And whether it's just due to COVID or the city regulations. When I talked in Nashville at the Bigger Pockets thing, I think I said I saw one bandit sign in the last 6 months. And now that it's a year later, I've seen still that same one bandit sign. So 18 months later, we just don't have any bandit signs. And when you have a higher price market with savvy sellers, they're just not going to call, one random bandit sign out of 10 that are on the corner. What's your bandit sign have to offer that the other 10 don't? It's just, we buy houses, than a phone number. And so I think sellers have moved past that. The marketers have ruined that, and now we have to move on. And then the last thing that I've seen that's not working is yellow letters. I think marketers have burnt through those. If you've owned a property for the last 20 years, let's just say it's free and clear and you've owned it for 20 years, how many yellow letters have you gotten? Every single month you're probably getting 7 to 20 yellow letters that all look the same, the same, red pen or whatever is on there. You've seen it all. So those are kind of the things that I found that aren't working. So let's talk about what is working. And for me, going in the spirit against of that, just doing one thing, now we're going to gather as many lists as possible. And the more niche and hard to get, the better. So of course you're going to pull lists from ListSource, and you're going to, pull lists from the county, maybe some foreclosure lists, some divorce lists, or some eviction lists. But you're also going to go out and you're going to pull, all the crazy ones that you can find. If you can find utility shutoff lists, if you can find, a list of, I like to find it where maybe it was a quick claim list where, quick claim for under $50. And that means that usually it's a family member quick claiming it to another family member. So they might have done that to get around probate or anything like that. So driving for dollars, of course, still a great list. And you're going to gather up all these lists, and you're going to find out who's showing up on multiple lists. So if you have 10 lists, and you can say, okay, who is on 3 lists or more? 3 lists, 4 lists, 5 lists, etc. Because these people are more likely willing and needing to sell quicker. If they're in divorce and they're in foreclosure, but then they're also on a utility shutoff list, that person's in trouble, and you're more likely to be able to help them. And so we're going to stack those lists. We're going to find out who's on multiple lists. We're going to take those. So those people who are on the stacked list, they show up on multiple lists. Now we're going to do a stacked marketing approach to them. So we're not just going to send them a pink postcard and call it good. We're not going to do that once a month. Now we're going to skip trace everybody on the list. We're going to mail them every 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to call them. We're going to text them. We're going to email them. We're going to go knock on their door. We're going to try to find them on Facebook. We're going to basically do everything that we can do to hunt them down until we either buy the property or we're told to go take a hike. And so that's kind of my philosophy, is we're going to aggressively pursue them because they need the most help.
Right.
And so we're going after them hard because we could be a great way out for them. And if they turn around and they say, hey, we don't, stop bothering me, take me off your lists, we'll keep hammering the other people and respect the wishes, hey, we don't need help. We don't want to be the scummy marketers who are, keep aggressively going after them. And so the big list, before we stack it, we're going to mail them, of course. But these people who show up on multiple lists, we're going to really get the best information possible. We're going to skip trace them, and we're going to hunt them down, and we're going to see if we can't help them.
Okay. So, and guys, that's basically list stacking. Like Anson said, you're going to take, just to recap, he excellently put, you put it out there. Excellent, Anson. But it's just taking this massive list and then you have these other smaller niche lists. So let's just say you have a massive list of absentee owners or high equity people. You have a massive list of high equity people. You find this through listsource.com or like Rebo Gateway or PropStream. And once you get this list, now you're going to pull all of these smaller lists. Again, it's going to be absentee owners out of state that's going through an eviction, that have a water shutoff notice. These people are highly motivated, and you have to be consistent in reaching out to them. So you're not only stacking that list, but you're stacking that marketing strategy. So you're going to send out that direct mail. You're going to hit them with a text message because you got their telephone number. You're going to give them a call, a cold call, and you just put that on rinse and repeat consistently until they say, yes, I want to sell, or screw off, Anson, stop calling me, stop reaching me. I am tired of you.
Yep, exactly.
But what normally happens is when you find that person that raised their hand and say, yes, Anson, I do need some help. What's the likelihood of you closing that deal and making some money?
Usually it's pretty high on that list. On a stacked list, everybody talks about your KPIs and your key performance indicators, and you're tracking how many mailers you're sending out, how many calls you're taking in, how many of those calls turn into appointments, and how many of those appointments turn into contracts. And so your key performance indicators on your big list, where you're just mailing out once a month, that looks like, typically, I guess, 30 calls turns into like 3 appointments, turns into one deal.
One deal.
And the stacked list, since these people are typically more in need of help, so they're in dire trouble typically, and you're aggressively pursuing them harder, you do have a little bit less competition who are going after them that hard. And so I don't have quite the numbers right in front of me, but I'd say it's about half of that. So, maybe 15 people that you talk to, I usually have more appointments on the stacked list, because it's a little bit easier to say, hey, like, can I come see the property? We can talk in person. And so for every 15 calls or contacts that we get, we're typically closing about 5 of those. And of course you're going to have the 10 that aren't ready yet, or they're waiting on probate to get through, or they're waiting on, 10 signers to sign that are the heirs of the property. There's always those that could pop through, as long as you're following up and you have an aggressive, really good follow-up schedule. But the KPIs look better because the list is just so much better. So much, there's so many factors there that are saying like, yes, we need to sell now. That will solve our problem.
Yep. So there you go. I mean, for you guys are looking for one marketing strategy, don't get caught up in all of the shiny bells and whistles, like you did in the beginning, Anson. I did also, because I was like, okay, I'm going to do lease options. Then I'm going to do, pre-foreclosures. Then I'm going to be a landlord. I'm going to own all of these doors and all of this kind of stuff. Focus on something. Get very, very good at it. Like Anson, with this list stacking, get good at it. You will be able to drive leads, because that is, the source of your business is driving leads. Now, Anson, you spoke about something that I always tell people that they need to know. You just broke down, hey, I know I need to do X amount of marketing. If I do that, I'm going to get 30 calls. From out of those 30 calls, I'm going to get 3 appointments. Out of those 3 appointments, I may get 1 deal. So now you can anticipate every 30 calls at number 31 or somewhere, some variation in there, I'm going to get a deal, versus people that get started and they're just taking that shotgun approach and saying, well, I'm just going to call, and they're not tracking their numbers. How important is that those KPIs to your business?
There was a long time where I didn't track anything. And then once I started tracking, I could really nail down, okay, how much money did it cost me to get this deal? And not a lot of people can answer that question.
Yep.
Is it did I spend $10,000 to make $10,000?
Yeah.
That's pretty important to know, right? So I think when you're just starting out, it'd be a good habit to start tracking that, but I don't think it's it's not the number one priority. But as you start spending more money on advertising and marketing and systems, basically, as you start spending more money and as you start scaling and trying to scale and trying to get more deals, and maybe you need to hire somebody in, knowing your numbers is going to be the number one priority of how much money is it costing us to get one deal in. And that's huge, because then you can reverse engineer that. Just like you said, you can say, okay, well, it's costing us $2,500 right now. So if I boost next month's spending by $10,000, we should be seeing 4 extra deals, out of that. And then you're always, once you know your numbers, you can break it down to cost per appointment, cost per call, which is a huge one, especially if you're training somebody to answer your phone calls. You go, it cost me $70 to make that phone ring once.
That's right.
And it goes, and I'm paying you, $20 an hour. So you do the math. If you miss the phone call, eventually we'll have to talk about that, how much that's affecting the bottom line, and you're basically wasting, the company money, basically. And the same thing, if you're small enough and you're answering the phone call yourself, and you miss a call because you just don't want to take it at that time, or maybe you're busy writing an email or something, you go, no, that cost me $70 to make that phone ring. I'm going to pick that up and I'm going to see if I can't turn that into a deal. And so, cost per appointment, cost per call, that becomes really kind of interesting, even if you're not like a numbers geek, and I'm definitely not, but it is interesting to see, if you miss an appointment, which obviously you don't want to do, but that could have cost you, $600 or $700 for that appointment, to get to that point. And so if you treat everything like that, then your business, you can scale it much easier, because you know exactly what the numbers are. You go, well, I only have $2,500 next month to throw at more marketing, but that should net you one more deal if you know your numbers, So.
And I'll give you an example, because I had a scarcity mentality in the beginning, and, I closed a couple of deals and I was like, okay, didn't really know my numbers. I was tracking them, but I really wasn't tracking them. So I was like, okay, well, I got $2,500. Let me throw this $2,500 out there and see what sticks on the wall. Close the deal. The deal was way more than $2,500. It's like $15,000, $16,000, $17,000, but I stayed on that $2,500 marketing track for the longest. And I was just looking back and I was like, you know what, if I would have started doubling my marketing or tripling my marketing when I started closing these deals, I would have been a lot further along, so now I know. And I just literally just had this conversation with my rep last week. And I was like, dude, every time you don't make a call or you don't answer the phone, that cost me $75. Me $75. I said, and each deal we close, it cost me $2,144.44, to get a closed deal. That's how much it cost me. And he was looking at me like, wow, you know all of this stuff? And I'm like, yes, it's very, very important. That's why if you want to keep working with me, you better start answering these phones and closing these deals and things like that. So guys, you really have to know your numbers and start out in the beginning, even if it's, you close that first deal or you're coming up to closing that first deal. That's even more important, because sometimes it's all you have. If you got that $2,400, $2,500, that's all you have. And you're like, okay, what am I doing with this $2,500? What's working? Because some people may say, okay, well, you take $1,000, put it in direct mail, take another $500, put it in text messaging, take another, $1,000 and put it towards cold calling. You got to know which one is working for you, at least in the beginning, before you can marry all of them together. So it's very, very important.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you know what list is doing well, and it's kind of hard once you start to do a stacked marketing approach, because you're just throwing everything at these people. But if your back end is organized and you're just mailing to your big list, and you can see that certain lists are performing better than others, even inside your big list, as long as that's organized on the back end, anybody who calls in, I should be able to punch in and see exactly where that person came from. Did they come from high equity? Did they come from, a divorce list? And then then you know who's performing better, like
Yep.
what list is performing better, and maybe you throw more money at that list.
Yep. So if you got a list that's, if it's an eviction list that's performing better than a utility shut-off list, then you're going to naturally put more money towards that eviction list and scale back that utility shut-off list. So guys, these things are important. They sound geeky, they sound nerdy, but once you get into it, you're really going to love it, because you're going to say, okay, well, if I put more money over here, I'll get more money out. So it's for every input there's an output, and you got to know what to increase the input in order to get that deal flow back out.
Exactly. Yep.
So tell us, Anson, we talked about the marketing, advertising, deal stacking, everything like that. How is your team set up? Is it just you, or do you have a team of agents? Kind of how is all of that set up?
Yeah, so right now it's pretty small. I've kept it small intentionally for a long time. Like, I think I've talked about it before on Bigger Pockets, but it's kind of a lifestyle type business. I'm able to bounce in and out. I don't have a huge team to have to support. But now I've shifted in the last year or so, mentally at least, maybe not quite on paper yet, but how you can have both. And so right now, there's 3 of us basically on the payroll, so to speak.
Okay.
Myself, my wife, and then we have kind of a project manager position where they run some of the day-to-day flip stuff, and then we have independent contractors underneath that with some of our crews and stuff. And right now, at the same time, so I'm trying to bring in an assistant to help out with some stuff that I don't want to do on a day-to-day
right.
basis. They can kind of track KPIs and input numbers and stuff, and direct some of the mailing campaigns. And then on the agent side, I am looking to kind of massively expand and build an agent team to take on either leads that we get that we can convert to listings, any other marketing that doesn't fall within the fix and flip or wholesale model. We'll throw those leads over to them, provide some training, and really build up that side of the business as well. So I kind of have multiple eggs in multiple baskets, so to speak. So it's pretty small right now. I have 1 agent coming on, and then hope to have 2 or 3 more, maybe by the end of the year. We'll see how it goes. So just expand smart is the goal.
And that one key thing that you said is lifestyle, because some people, they hear, on Bigger Pockets or wherever, I'm doing 1,000 deals, or I have 1,000 doors. Well, that may be great for that person. The next person may say, you know what, I just need 7 doors so I can come off of my job, and that's what I want. So guys, don't fall into that immediate trap of bigger is always better, because it's not. It depends on your life, and that's one of the things that I'm learning. So you're scaling, you're building out, your team at your pace, to do what you need to do. And one thing that we did miss, that we didn't touch on as a benefit as an agent and a wholesaler, is what do you do with these leads that won't accept your wholesale offer, but they absolutely want to sell?
Yep. Yeah. So that's another tool in my tool belt that I tell investors who aren't agents yet, is saying, I've converted a lot of listing or a lot of appointments into listings because I come at it so transparently with the sellers, and I say, hey, look, my offer may not be, what you're looking for, but I'm still committed to help you and help you sell. So if that doesn't work for you, we can talk about maybe listing your property and still selling, because at the end of the day, what are you going to do? You still need to sell. So I'm here to help, whether I'm the buyer or I'm representing you as your agent. And obviously I'm there to buy first, but I'm there to help above that. So,
Yeah.
if I can help them and we turn it into a listing and I still get paid a commission, they still get out of their situation, it's a win-win. I'm still there to help. So sometimes I'll run the numbers both ways. I'll say, this is what it looks like if I buy, this is what it looks like if you sell it as is on the market. And
There you
sometimes
go.
those numbers are pretty close. The net can be really close, which helps if I say, hey, on the investor side, there's no inspections, there's no appraisals, there's no showings. We can close in 2 weeks or we can close in 2 months, whenever you want to. And on this other side, obviously, there's going to be the showings and the commissions and the appraisals. And so sometimes people look at the pros and cons in each category and they go, that looks better if I want, I'll just sell to you and it'll be easy. Or they go, maybe we can make a little bit more money if we list. Let's do that. And so I do pick up a number of listings every year based on that, just because I have more tools in my tool belt.
Yeah, you're maximizing those leads, and that's one of the things that we do is, okay, you want to accept that wholesale offer? Well, I guarantee you that we will be able to get you that offer amount that you're looking for if you allow us the opportunity to list the property for you.
Yep.
Our guarantee is when we first talk to you is that we're going to find an avenue to help you. So this is just another avenue. And that's another benefit, and that's another bonus for them. So, Anson, great information so far, man. What we're going to do, we're going to roll into our hot seat questions. We're going to put Anson on the hot seat. So Anson, answer these questions for us, man, as quickly as possible.
Okay.
Starting over, what would you do differently?
So if I had to start all over, I would definitely buy a house hack to start with. And so at the time, I think I could have picked up a fourplex, lived in one unit, rented out the other three. And right now I would have a solid, I guess a more solid foundation going into like that second and third year of having some income that's steady coming in.
Gotcha. Okay. What is your greatest commodity outside of capital?
Definitely finding deals. I feel like I could get dropped into any market and within 2 weeks or a month have a good enough grasp of what's going on to be able to go out and find deals in that market. So that would be like starting over basically, and drop in and be able to find deals.
Well, that's why you're called Anson the Deal Finder, right? So what drives your ambition, Anson?
My ambition, what drives me is my mission statement. I have it up on my wall over here. You can't see it, but it's kind of this big poster of basically what kind of my life mission is. And it's really, comes down to being able to provide an amazing life for myself and my family, and to give back, to be able to grow, and that we collect experiences and not material things. And so, the number one thing, I have a pretty small family. So the number one thing is to be able to have, the most amazing life while I'm here and with my son and my wife. So
there you go. That's what it's all about. I mean, it's family. That's what most people are doing this for, is for the family. So what do you believe is your greatest challenge?
My greatest challenge is always myself. So whether it's a mindset, I do sometimes get like a recurring kind of a roller coaster effect. So sometimes I'm down in the valley of things, and maybe just my mindset. And that's been the number one thing that's always held me back, is myself. And so, working through clearing out those. And so I have an upward trajectory at all times is the goal. But definitely, you're on your worst enemy, and that definitely applies to me for sure.
And it's funny that you say that, because the majority of the investors that I talk to, when I ask them about their greatest challenge, it's never really anything external. It's always something that, I could do this, I need to think this way, so on and so forth. So guys, that mindset piece is very, very important, because you can limit your own progress by the way you think and the way you act and things like that. So, Anson, Tell us about your book, man. I know you're an author, you're an accomplished author. So give us the backdrop on your book and how we can find it.
Yeah. So the short version is that at the end of the day, I believe that finding deals is the most important skill that you can have. Tiny bit of backstory is that it started off as kind of a wholesaling book.
Okay.
And then with the publisher, we morphed it into like, well, okay, what if we took one step back from wholesaling and we went to finding deals? Because whether you want to be a landlord, fix and flipper, you want to be a developer, you want to go own a 20 unit buildings all across, Kansas or something, whatever your goal is, what's that number one thing that you have to be able to do? You have to be able to find those deals no matter what. And you have to be able to find them better than the next guy. So whether that's, learning to network, learning to market, learning to analyze, it's all in there. And of course, the title is Finding and Funding Great Deals. So not only do you have to find those deals, but you have to pay for them somehow too.
Yep.
So the book goes through that. It goes through analyzing rentals, fix and flips, wholesales, all of that stuff. It basically gets you from zero to the closing table. And whatever you do with it after that, I don't care. But I got you there.
Yep.
You could get there and then burn it down the next day for insurance money. I don't recommend that. But you could do that, and I at least got you to the closing table. So that was the goal. And you can find it on Bigger Pockets, on Amazon. There are some physical bookstores that have it still, Barnes and Noble and stuff.
Okay.
And so you can find it pretty much, just type in the title. It'll probably take you to Amazon first, but it's on Audible too. So if you want to listen to this voice for 10 hours talking to you about real estate, you can do that too.
Gotcha. So guys, that's Finding and Funding Deals by Anson Young. I'll make sure I put the Amazon link down in the show notes. He's a contributor with Bigger Pockets. He speaks with Bigger Pockets he's on the forums, he's active, I met him at the Bigger Pockets conference in Nashville. So he is definitely out there. He's doing deals. So he's not one that's talking and preaching and not acting and doing deals. So Anson, I really appreciate it, man. You gave us tons of information, man, tons of content. Thank you so much, man, for being here and being with us. So next, finally, how can we find you? How can, our listeners reach out to you?
Yeah, I think the best way to get a hold of me is through Bigger Pockets. Just seems to be a pretty easy place to grow and to go and just send me a message. So biggerpockets.com/users/Anson. And then, definitely send me a colleague request, send me a message about anything. So if you need help with something, I can see if I can help you. If you just have questions, or maybe you have something mean to say, you can do that too. It's a free world, so you can do that. But yeah, definitely reach out and say, hey, I'd love to hear from you.
Okay, guys. So that's biggerpockets.com/users/Anson. I'll make sure I have that in the show notes as well. That way you can talk directly to Anson, get some questions answered, about how to stack lists, what kind of lists should you stack, and, where to find lists and things like that. So Anson, thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Great job. Without any further delay, what is, in parting, you have any parting words for our listeners?
Yeah, I think Marcus has a great platform here, great heart. He, what I like most is he hit on something that I hit in my book a lot, and I made sure that I drove it home. But he's here to help. He's here to help his sellers. He's here to help you guys get as much information as possible, and that connects with me a lot because I talk about being there to help first, and then the money comes later, and I think that that's huge, and I think Marcus has exemplified that in his first inclination when it comes to talking about sellers is hey, I'm here to help. I think you said in different avenues to get you the help that you need.
Yep.
And that's huge. I think if you go in with that kind of spirit and that heart of going in to help people, sellers, buyers, sellers, whoever it is, if you're there to help them as much as possible, you're going to go really far in this business, because people can really weed out if you're just there for the money. And I don't know, it has just this scent to it that people pick up on.
Yep.
And they know if you're not there to help and you just see dollar signs in your eyes. But if you're there to help, you're going to go real far.
There you go, guys. You hear from Anson. Be genuine, have a giver's mentality and a helper's mentality. You'll be successful, in anything that you do. So Anson, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. Guys, reach out to Anson. Believe me, I would not have anyone on the show that I do not believe is credible and have the content and the information that you need to push you further. So Anson, thank you. And guys, remember to always enjoy the journey.
Thanks for having me, man.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening to today's show. I picked up some great actionable items, and I'm sure you did as well. If so, let me know. You can always reach me via social media at facebook.com/MRCS Maloney, Twitter at MRCS Maloney, and of course, IG at MRCS Maloney. You can also always reach me via email at mmaloney@equityri.com. Make sure you reach out to our guests as well. You can always find their contact information in the show notes below. If you have not subscribed already, what are you waiting for? Join the family. And while you're at it, leave us a 5-star review. This is how we tell if we're providing you with what you need for your journey. If there's someone you would like for me to interview, or if there's a subject matter you would like for me to cover, please let me know. Finally, if you're looking for additional information about real estate investing, go to equityrealestateblog.com. Also, youtube.com/Marcus Maloney. Until next time, family, always enjoy the journey.